Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Let's get started. Russia is unstoppable, but can a European shield for Ukraine stop Moscow? Will that change things? That's the question we are focusing on tonight as we delve deeper into the developments shaping the battlefield and what's brewing behind the scenes in the quest for peace. That's our top focus tonight, and here's a look at what else is lined up for you on the show. With the violence in Syria turning deadlier, where are things headed? We also tell you how things have reached this point. It's being called Mount Rubbish and a lot of other things. Will Delhi's garbage mess get resolved anytime soon? All this and much more coming your way.
Russia wants to make a deal because in a certain different way that only I know.
Our top story tonight on Gravitas is about the Russia-Ukraine war. Russia has launched one of its most brutal attacks on Ukraine this year, unleashing a massive wave of missiles and drones that in a way turned cities into war zones overnight. Over 250 projectiles rained down on Ukraine, devastating critical infrastructure and leaving millions at risk of blackouts. Entire power stations were reportedly reduced to rubble. Gas pipelines erupted into flames, while key cities face relentless bombardment. According to reports, at least 70 Russian missiles, both cruise and ballistic, along with nearly 200 drones, struck energy grids, ports, residential areas. Russian forces launched the assault from air and sea, reportedly, targeting areas like Kharkiv, Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, Odessa, Poltava, and Ternopil. In fact, the Ukrainian Naval Forces spokesperson has said that this was the largest attack involving Russian warships in the Black Sea this year. In Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city, a missile blast near an apartment block injured at least 8 people. While in Ukraine's Black Sea port town of Odessa, the port's warehouses, which stored ammunition, were reportedly struck, along with power substations. The massive Russian drone attacks also damaging key energy infrastructure and triggering fires in residential areas in the city. In Ternopil, a gas pipeline reportedly erupted in a fiery explosion after a direct missile hit. Russian missiles also struck gas storage facilities in Poltava and Sumy regions, along with the Ivano-Frankivsk and Vinnytsia. Such was the extent of damage in Poltava that Ukraine's largest private energy company had to suspend gas production. Meanwhile, in eastern Ukrainian city of Pivden, residents are reportedly bracing for at least 5 days without electricity after a key transformer was destroyed in the Russian attacks. According to the Ukrainian president, fighter jets, including F-16s and Mirage, were used to repel the Russian onslaught. The Ukrainian military officials said that their forces managed to intercept 34 incoming missiles and 100 drones, but the sheer volume of the attack meant that many found their targets. You see, Ukraine's allies are also on high alert. The Polish military reportedly scrambled fighter jets and activated air defense systems In response to the attack, the NATO member country was reportedly closely monitoring Russian aggression near the borders, wary of any spillover effects from the ongoing war. The attacks come just a day after another deadly Russian strike in Zelensky's hometown. A missile attack struck a hotel in the city, killing 4 people and injuring more than 30 people. In fact, just a day earlier, Zelensky had reiterated a partial truce proposal at the European summit, in which Russia and Ukraine agreed to a halt on long-range strikes on energy and other civilian infrastructure and halt operations in the Black Sea. High-level talks between Ukrainian and US officials are set to take place in Saudi Arabia next week, focusing on a possible ceasefire and a large-scale prisoner exchange between Kiev and Moscow. Meanwhile, earlier today, US President Donald Trump said that Ukraine and Russia have no choice but to work towards a peace deal. Listen in.
Ukraine wants to make a deal because I don't think they have a choice. I also think that Russia wants to make a deal because in a different way that only I know, they have no choice either.
European leaders are basically grappling with a strategy to safeguard Ukraine against the Russian assault now. And in a bold move that could redefine the dynamics on the battlefield, there is a proposal of a Europe-led Ukraine air protection plan that could halt Russian missile attacks. Our next report telling you more.
On the front lines, Ukraine is taking a relentless beating. Russian forces, emboldened by reduced Western support, are hammering Ukrainian cities daily with missiles and drones. The battlefield dynamics have shifted, with Ukraine facing mounting difficulties in countering Moscow's aerial assault. Zelensky is pleading for peace. He has renewed calls for a mutual halt to aerial attacks on critical infrastructure. With Donald Trump opening direct channels with Moscow and Kyiv while pushing for peace, European leaders are realizing they must act independently. Turkey is ready to send troops to Ukraine as part of a peacekeeping mission. Now Italy is suggesting extending NATO's Article 5 security umbrella over Ukraine.
I think it would certainly be much more effective. A different thing from joining NATO, but it means extending the same protection to Ukraine as NATO countries.
But there's a lack of cohesion within Europe.
Now in Europe, there is a concept that wants to support Ukraine while destroying Europe economically. It is a good thing to help, and the Ukrainians also need help, but they cannot be helped while we are going to ruin ourselves.
But now there's a new bold plan drawn up by military strategists that proposes deploying 120 European fighter jets to create a protective air shield over Ukraine. The European-led air protection zone will be operated separately from NATO to halt Russian cruise missile and drone attacks on cities and infrastructure. The proposed force could consist of Eurofighter Typhoons and Dassault Rafales, both advanced aircraft with superior agility, cutting-edge radar systems and versatile weapon payloads. European experts say these jets won't be in the direct firing line of a Russian aerial attack, and hence the risks of a Russian retaliation are less. However, the operational environment over Ukraine is complex. Russia has one of the best air forces in the world. Sukhoi Su-57 is Russia's latest fighter jet with integrated avionics, super maneuverability and a large payload. Russia has actively deployed Sukhoi Su-34 in the Russia-Ukraine war. These advanced jets have the ability to deliver precision strikes over long distances. Apart from that, Russia has several other fighter aircraft, making it a formidable air power. The potential for escalation remains high, as any engagement between European jets and Russian forces could lead to a broader conflict. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Our next story is about Donald Trump's new world order, starting with disorder. It's been quite a start for Trump in the White House, but how long will this disorder last is the immediate question. And what will the world look like if and when this phase is over? Before we go on, let's tell you a bit about a statement that's been making headlines. This is Valery Zaluzhny, Ukraine's ambassador to the United Kingdom. He is a former Ukrainian general. You know what he says? Well, he's not mincing any words while criticizing America's handling of this war. In fact, he has accused Donald Trump of, quote-unquote, destroying the world order. According to him, Trump has called into question the unity of the whole Western world. And just look at the timing of those remarks. When matters between Ukraine and the United States are seriously complicated, following what went down between Zelensky and Trump at the Oval Office, while things have definitely come a long way since then, peace remains a distant dream at this point. And to think that Trump had claimed 24 hours is all that it would take for the war to end. Now, the war of words that was witnessed at the White House, America's double jolt for Ukraine, pausing military aid and intelligence sharing, and the desperate situation that Ukraine finds itself in. And no wonder then, the Ukrainian government is reportedly trying to distance itself from the ambassador's remarks. It is a major accusation. Meanwhile, the French President Emmanuel Macron hit back at Vladimir Putin for likening him to the Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte, branding the Russian president an imperialist who sought to rewrite history. The exchange coming in as tensions spiked over Macron's suggestion to extend France's nuclear deterrence to other European countries, with Moscow calling it a threat. In fact, Macron called Russia a threat to France and Europe and said he would open a debate on extending France's nuclear umbrella to other allies in Europe. The Russian president, by the way, was quick to respond to Macron's comment. Listen in.
Since the times of Napoleon, since Napoleon's invasion, some people are still eager. There are still people who want to go back to the times of Napoleon, forgetting how it ended.
Now, just for context here, French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte had invaded the Russian Empire in 1812, and in a disastrous 6-month military campaign that ended in Russian victory. The Russian foreign minister also criticized Macron's comments. He went on to compare him to Hitler and Napoleon, in fact, saying that unlike those leaders, Macron did not openly say he wanted to conquer Russia, but he evidently wants the same thing, quote unquote. Former President Dmitry Medvedev also took a shot at the French president, calling him Micron in a social media post. Medvedev wrote that the French leader will soon disappear forever and will not be missed. In the midst of all this, what a French senator has said tells you a lot about how volatile the situation really is. According to him, what's happening is a tragedy for the free world and a tragedy for the United States. In fact, he painted a rather grim picture of the United States under Trump, according to him. Clearly, Trump's new world order has started with disorder. But what does all of this mean for Trump's positioning is also the question. Just have a look at this headline from The Economist. Quote, Donald Trump has started a mafia-like struggle for global power, but the new rules do not suit America, quote unquote. Says a lot. And just look at that image, by the way. It can be interpreted in many ways. The fact of the matter is, Donald Trump standing at a crucial point, so is Europe. What does this mean for NATO, though? What for the United States at large and for the world? The stakes are as high as they could be. Shifting focus now to Syria. It has plunged into fresh turmoil as its new authorities launched a brutal crackdown against the Assad loyalists. A sweeping security operation is presently underway, and this comes after fierce clashes with fighters loyal to the ousted President Bashar al-Assad. The Syrian War Monitor says the death toll has risen to 71, with most of the casualties belonging to the Alawite minority. A day after the deadly skirmishes erupted, tensions continue to flare up across the country. Eyewitness footage circulating on social media showing intense gunfire, allegedly involving Assad-linked militants in Homs. The conflict is spreading rapidly, hitting the mountainous coastal region where government forces are heavily deployed, and the residents report relentless gunfire across multiple cities and villages, deepening the chaos. Gunmen, some from the former regime, ambushed military forces, checkpoints and headquarters along the coastline in Latakia. Local gunmen took hold of military zones where they holed up in areas in the Latakia mountains to launch the attacks, while others camped in Jable city. A curfew has now been imposed in the cities of Homs, Latakia, Tartus, where the fighting is raging. The coastal province of Latakia is the Assad clan's stronghold and home to a sizable Alawite community, the same religious minority as the former president. The violence poses the biggest challenge to the country's authorities since Assad was ousted in December 2024 in a lightning offensive by the Islamist-led rebels. Restoring security has been one of the most complex tasks for the new authorities since the fall of the Assad regime that ended 13 years of the civil war triggered by his crackdown on pro-democracy demonstrations. Saudi Arabia condemned the outlaw groups after deadly clashes with security forces in Syria and reaffirmed its backing for the new authorities that deposed the long-time ruler Assad. Our next story is about Delhi's Mount Rubbish, among many things that it has been called. And if you've been to those parts, you definitely know what I'm talking about. For decades, these mountains of waste have grown unchecked. They're infamous. And now the officials are saying they are taking action to eliminate them. But will they succeed is the question. New Delhi, home to over 32 million people, has long struggled with an overwhelmed waste management system. Decades of neglect have led to landfills reaching embarrassing heights. Some as tall as 200 feet, visible from kilometers away. Every summer, soaring temperatures ignite fires in the decomposing waste, releasing thick, toxic fumes that blanket the nearby neighborhoods in deadly chemicals. The Bhaswa landfill is infamous for quite some time now. And Delhi's Environment Minister has recently said that by the end of this year, Bhaswa's garbage pile will be reduced to a level where it's no longer visible from afar. In fact, he insists that efforts are underway to process and dispose of the waste efficiently, with a broader goal to ensure that no new garbage mountains emerge in the future. Quite a promise. For thousands of impoverished families, meanwhile, living in the shadow of these landfills, this promise offers a major ray of hope. Many of them migrated to Delhi, remember, seeking work, only to find themselves trapped in this toxic mess, with little choice but to endure the stench and the health effects.
For the last 25 years, I've heard promises that this dump would be cleared in this many years. I'm very distressed by this. There were things that belonged to me on this plot of land. They took all of it away. They took away my land.
According to authorities, Bhaswa is just the beginning. They plan to clear the site entirely by March next year, followed by similar efforts at Delhi's other two major dumps located in Ghazipur and Okhla. Now, if these promises hold, it could mark a turning point in the war against waste. But let's just take a close look at the numbers. What do they look like? Delhi produces over 11,000 tons of solid waste every single day. According to reports, the three major landfill sites holding nearly 20 million tons of waste. Since July 2019, officials claim they have removed nearly 12 million tons. According to a recent report by Delhi's civic body, Ghazipur alone holds 8.4 million tons. Bhalswa, meanwhile, has 5.45 million tons. Okhla remains buried under 3.4 million tons. Clearing these sites, of course, will not happen overnight. It cannot. And there is an even bigger issue here, the sheer volume of untreated domestic waste. In peak summer months, by the way, landfill fires release excessive methane, further choking a city already suffocating under one of the world's worst air pollution blankets. So the question remains, can Delhi finally break the cycle of mismanagement? Or will these garbage mountains continue to thrive? And let's tell you what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. Can early menopause increase the risk of type 2 diabetes? We tell you what a study says. US President Donald Trump has made another U-turn on tariffs. In just 2 days, he has backpedaled on key trade taxes targeting America's top trade partners, Canada and Mexico. So what's really happening here? Is this a calculated strategy, a calculated move, or is this a sign that his economic gamble is not really paying off already? It is a risky gamble after all. Let's just break down the moves for you. It's quite a story. Donald Trump made headlines earlier by enforcing tariffs on imports from Canada and Mexico. It was a major announcement. He pitched them as a way to protect American industries. But there was immediate backlash. Markets tanked, businesses panicked, world leaders fired back. And now, just as quickly as he made that announcement, Trump is pulling back. Early this week, Trump announced a temporary exemption for car manufacturers in North America, just 1 day after 25% tariffs were supposed to take effect. And then within hours, he issued another order, expanding the list of exempted goods. A large chunk of Canadian and Mexican exports that was suddenly supposed to be hit with new taxes, turns out won't be. So what really changed? Did Trump overplay his hand? Or did he realize that these tariffs would actually hurt American businesses more than they would help? Meanwhile, Mexico's president immediately thanked Trump for the move, and Canada's finance minister quickly announced that their country would hold off on retaliatory tariffs. So that's been the fallout so far, for now. But the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made it clear that despite Trump's partial rollback, a trade war is still very much on the table.
Confirm that we will continue to be in a trade war that was launched by the United States for the foreseeable future. So Canadians should continue to buy Canadian, continue to stand up for each other. But we are trying to reduce the areas and the impact that these tariffs that the Americans are bringing in will have on Canadian workers.
Now, it's important to point out here that Trump has not let off on tariffs completely. According to White House officials, nearly half of all imports from Mexico and 62% of goods from Canada could still face new taxes, which means uncertainty remains high and American businesses don't really know what to expect next. It's a guessing game, a dangerous one. And the White House is already teasing another round of trade restrictions, by the way. On April 2nd, they plan to unveil a new batch of reciprocal tariffs on more countries. But the question is, will they stick to that this time, or will Trump change his mind all over again? Meanwhile, American markets were impacted by the tariffs. The S&P 500, the index tracking America's biggest companies, fell nearly 1.8% on Thursday. Investors are reportedly worried about a potential trade war, and when asked if his sudden shift was about calming the markets, Trump flatly denied it and said that it had nothing to do with the market. Trade between the US, Canada and Mexico is massive, by the way. Billions of dollars worth of goods crossing every single day in a way. And with the US trade deficit already soaring, experts are warning that Trump's erratic tariff moves could make things even worse. With businesses trying to dodge future tariffs, American imports surged by 10% in January, pushing the trade gap to its highest level since 1992. And experts are warning that tariffs will make imported goods more expensive, which could drive up prices across the board. And that puts even more pressure on American families already dealing with the rising costs. So what's the takeaway here? One day, Trump seems to be waging a trade war, then the next day, we see a major U-turn. Businesses don't really know what's coming next. Markets are reacting with fear, and global trade partners are losing trust. It's a tariff tango that the world is watching very closely, with bated breath, where every move matters. Shifting focus for now, in an unprecedented escalation, Taiwan has detected 11 Chinese surveillance balloons encroaching its airspace within a single day. This is a record since December 2023, by the way. The development coinciding with the presence of 5 Chinese aircraft and 6 warships operating near the island, intensifying concerns over Beijing's assertive military maneuvers. The surge in the number of balloon incursions follows a recent spike in aerial provocations, with Taiwan observing 45 Chinese aircraft near its territory within a 24-hour period last week. And this is again the highest count this year. China also conducted live fire drills off Taiwan's southern coast, further raising regional tensions. These images released by the Taiwan Navy last week showed a Taiwanese naval officer issuing warnings to Chinese warships, underscoring the heightened state of alert.
You have entered our sea Taiwan restricted waters without permission. Your actions have destabilized maritime order and security of our sea Taiwan. Adjust your course and leave our restricted waters immediately, or we will take the necessary action under the Act of our sea Taiwan.
Taiwan has condemned these actions, accusing Beijing of unilateral threats and harassment extending beyond Taiwan's waters to international domains near Vietnam, the Philippines, New Zealand, Australia. A Chinese Coast Guard vessel also intruded restricted waters near Taiwan's Kinmen Island, prompting Taiwan's Coast Guard to dispatch patrol boats and demand its immediate departure. Amid the escalating tensions, China's foreign minister once again reiterated Beijing's stance, asserting that Taiwan has never been an independent country and that it will never be. Listen into those remarks.
The only reference to the Taiwan region in the UN is Taiwan province of China. Taiwan is never a country, not in the past and never in the future. To clamor for Taiwan independence is to split the country. To support Taiwan independence is to interfere in China's internal affairs, and to connive at Taiwan independence is to undermine the stability of the Taiwan Strait.
This declaration aligns with China's intensified efforts to isolate Taiwan diplomatically and bolster military posturing in the region as well. In recent years, China has escalated the deployment of fighter jets and warships around Taiwan, aiming to assert its sovereignty claims, a position firmly rejected by Taipei. Taiwan, a self-governing democracy, faces increasing pressure as China seeks to erase its international presence by poaching diplomatic allies and obstructing participation in the global platforms. The situation remains a potential flashpoint for conflict involving the United States, Taiwan's most significant backer and primary arms supplier.
The Ministry of National Defense confirmed today that 11 Chinese balloons were detected over western Taiwan within the past 24 hours. According to the ministry, these balloons moved at altitudes between 17,000 and 24,000 feet before disappearing by 4:50 p.m. Thursday. Military experts suggest that these balloons primarily serve scientific research purposes, collecting atmospheric data. However, the unexpected arrival of balloons has created concerns in Taiwan. A researcher at the Institute for National Defense and Security Research noted that the balloons' small size and limited payload make them unsuitable for carrying sophisticated reconnaissance equipment. As tensions continue to rise in the region, the detection of these Chinese balloons serves as another reminder of the ongoing challenges faced by Taiwan in maintaining its security and sovereignty. This is Dimitri Boyas in Taipei for TVBS World Taiwan.
Shifting focus for now, in Nepal, hundreds of protesters took to the streets across the country demanding the restoration of the monarchy. This as opposition members protested in the parliament against what they called the dictatorial ways of Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli. Supporters of the former King Gyanendra took out a motorbike rally in the capital Kathmandu. The rally covered nearly 4-kilometer route from Babar Mahal to the erstwhile Royal Palace on Darbar Marg. One of the slogans they shouted meant, "Vacate the Royal Palace, we are bringing our king back," quote unquote. The rally in Kathmandu had participants from both Rashtriya Prajatantra Party, RPP, and Save the Nation Culture and Dharma campaign. The RPP, by the way, announced that it will organize a grand welcome to the former king when he returns from Pokhara to Kathmandu on March 9. The former king has been camping in Pokhara for the past 6 weeks. Weeks of street protests in 2006 had forced Gyanendra to abandon his authoritarian rule and cede power back to the parliament. 2 years later, the parliament voted to abolish the centuries-old monarchy. Royalist groups accusing the country's major political parties of corruption and failed governance and say that people are frustrated with politicians.
A group of people here in Kathmandu, Nepal, have carried out a rally and a protest in support of monarchy. These pro-monarchy protesters have a demand of abolishment of the republic system. They say that the government after government have failed to fulfill their promises and commitment made to the public. They say that the governments have failed to work for the country's economy and the betterment. They have failed to develop this underdeveloped country. Saloni Murarka for WION World This One in Kathmandu, Nepal.
Women have been inducted in the Indian Navy since the last 3 decades, and contributions of women officers have been evolving every year, both in terms of complexity of the operations as well as the spread of domains in which they serve across air, land and sea. WION's principal correspondent, Siddharth MP, giving us a glimpse into this growing women's power in the Indian Navy. We'll get you that report in just a bit. Meanwhile, shifting focus, let's talk about a rather unique scheme proposed by a tiny island nation of Nauru, which can reportedly get one an indirect or backdoor entry into the UK. How exactly is that? By offering citizenship for $105,000, which is just over 91.44 lakh rupees per passport. Let that sink in. Now, spanning just 20 square kilometers, this tiny island nation citizenship scheme apparently comes with benefits like visa-free access to a total of 89 countries, including the UK, Hong Kong, UAE, among others. But what exactly made the country extend these benefits in the first place or come up with such a scheme? You see, Nauru is facing grave climatic challenges, like rising sea levels that are eating away at the country's fertile coastal fringe, and it is in the pressing need of funds. Not just that, the island nation of nearly 13,000 residents is planning a mass inland relocation drive where the residents will be moved to safer and higher grounds due to the floods they face. And to carry that out, the government has decided to drum up fundings by launching a golden passport initiative for foreigners. Just for context here, Nauru has long grappled with both economic as well as environmental challenges. In the early 20th century, phosphate mining brought a significant wealth to the island. However, it left about 80% of Nauru's land devastated, which limited its habitability. And officials, by the way, believe almost 90% of the population will eventually need to be moved away from the coastline. In the midst of all of this, the launch of the new scheme only proves that government there is trying hard to save the island nation from further damage or disaster. Having said that, Nauru is not the first aiming to use proceeds from citizenship sales to protect their population from escalating climate impact, as it follows Dominica in this venture. But the question is it really that simple as it sounds in terms of executing the proposed scheme? It seems as the new scheme comes with the possibility of criminal exploitation if misused. Shifting focus now, the race to establish human presence on the moon has just received a major boost. India's Chandrayaan-3 mission has uncovered evidence suggesting lunar water may be more accessible than scientists previously believed, potentially transforming plans for long-term lunar habitation. Take a look.
Beneath the dusty lunar surface lies an unexpected abundance of trapped water ice, potentially transforming humanity's future in space. India's groundbreaking Chandrayaan-3 mission has shattered previous assumptions about lunar resources, revealing a far more promising landscape for would-be settlers. This discovery could accelerate plans for permanent lunar bases by decades. India's ambitious lunar mission has uncovered compelling evidence that water ice exists in far greater quantities and more accessible locations than scientists previously believed possible. The mission's lander, which touched down near the Moon's South Pole region in August 2023, recorded surprising temperature data that has scientists rethinking lunar water distribution models. The breakthrough came when researchers applied this temperature data to advanced computational models, calibrated to match the precise topographical and illumination conditions at the landing site. Their findings, published in the Nature journal, reveal that countless sloped areas at higher latitudes facing the poles could harbor significant ice deposits just below the surface. Chandrayaan-3's discovery represents a triumph for India's space program and a crucial contribution to humanity's space exploration roadmap. As NASA, ESA, and private companies race to establish permanent lunar outposts, this new understanding of lunar water distribution could prove to be the key that unlocks sustained human presence beyond Earth.
You might have faced period-related issues at least once in your lifetime. As far as your menstruation cycle is concerned, if you're a woman, the troubles of which could also very well last or linger even after they end for good, which is during menopause. A new study has now revealed that early menopause in women may increase the risk of type 2 diabetes. What's the link, you might be wondering? In this study, researchers from Korea University examined health data from over 1.1 million postmenopausal women in Korea and to explore the possible link between early menopause and type 2 diabetes. What came out of their analysis, you ask? Well, it revealed that women who experienced menopause before age 40 faced a higher risk of type 2 diabetes than those experiencing menopause at 50 or later. Now, if found to be true, this is quite concerning and warrants the need for specific prevention strategies. However, the good news so far is that, as per researchers, the supporting evidence for this study remains limited. But why is there a cause of concern, really? As per experts, type 2 diabetes is a chronic disease linked to severe health complications, including cardiovascular diseases and increased mortality, which is basically the number of deaths during a particular period above the usual and expected number. Usually, genetics, obesity, lifestyle are the factors that could lead to type 2 diabetes. However, the study sheds light on the age-related factors as well that are now being linked to the risks. That is the age during menopause. Menopause is a point in time when one has gone 12 consecutive months without a menstrual period. Usually it happens in women over the age of 50. And as per researchers, menopause marks a major hormonal shift in a woman's life, as it influences metabolism, insulin sensitivity, and overall glucose control. And as per the study, the absence of estrogen, which plays a key role in maintaining insulin sensitivity and glucose metabolism, may contribute to the increased risk of type 2 diabetes. So what is the way out? The findings stress on the fact that early detection and a hands-on management can go a long way in minimizing the risks for type 2 diabetes. Regular checkups and better lifestyle practices also help, especially those with a history of premature or early menopause. And here's a word of advice to all the women out there: to prioritize your health above all. Remember, your health is in your hands. It's rare to find an Olympian on the FBI's top 10 most wanted fugitives list, but a Canadian former snowboarder has shocked the world by trading his athletic career for a life of crime. Ryan Wedding, once a promising Olympic contender, now has a $10 million reward on his head. In fact, Wedding has turned into a drug lord. He is wanted for his role in a $1 billion cross-border drug trafficking operation, reportedly. The 43-year-old is accused of moving vast amounts of cocaine from Colombia through Mexico to the United States and Canada. Wedding is likely to be hiding in Mexico under the protection of the Sinaloa drug cartel. The FBI, by the way, has offered the substantial $10 million reward for information that leads to his capture or conviction. Wedding grew up in Ontario and competed for Canada in the 2002 Salt Lake City Olympic Games, where he finished 24th in the parallel giant slalom event. 4 years after the Games, life unraveled rather quickly for Wedding. He vanished from the snowboarding world and slipped into the shadows of the criminal underworld in a way. He was named in a search warrant investigating a marijuana growing operation in British Columbia. In 2010, Wedding was convicted of drug trafficking after attempting to buy cocaine from a US government agent and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. He sought to dismiss the charges, claiming outrageous conduct by US authorities. He suggested that they used a violent former KGB agent as an undercover operative. Wedding is also wanted in several homicide cases, by the way.